What's up, amigos? Can you feel it? Less than 24 hours. Today, we're going to be going over the Lash Sorceress. So the Lash Sorceress, it started out as a meme actually in the beta test, but it quickly developed into a crazy level 20 build in the Server Slam event. And people really started to look at the skill in a serious manner. It is a basic skill, but this is going to be probably the strongest Sorceress build you can play. So the pros, it is going to be extremely strong, both AoE and single target without aspects. With the aspects, this build is going to be one of the best builds in the entire game. I'm not even joking, it's probably going to be up there with Whirlwind Barb. So for our pros, we also have mobility, and yeah, I know that's crazy to say, especially if you've been following this series, but we are mobile. We stack cooldown reduction in the build, and we get to spam teleport, and we get some inherent movement speed throughout our passives. And I mean, the build is actually fun. Who would have thought that a melee sorceress is actually fun? Now here's one of the weird ones. It's tanky but squishy. I know that sounds weird, but we survive when we shouldn't with Flame Shield. We'll go over that in a minute here. It is solo and group viable. We dish out vulnerability, a massive amount of crowd control, massive damage. And I gotta list it, I mean, the aspects change this build entirely and brings it to another level. Again, I mean, the build is perfectly fine from leveling all the way into endgame. When you start to transition into late endgame, the aspects will take you for a ride. Now for the cons, it's a melee build. I know a lot of people are very iffy on melee builds in Diablo 4, so I always put it into a con when I make one. So like with the pro I mentioned, at times it's going to be squishy, especially when you're leveling. A lot of defensives come through our passives and a lot of just crowd control in general. So yeah, it'll come over time. Another thing is, with a lot of builds in Diablo 4, it's going to feel like you hit a wall at times. Again, it could be a positive. I think it's a positive, but it could also be a con, depending on how, you know, the type of player you are, whether you're more casual or not. But the fact that it needs aspects to reach over the 9,000 potential, really, that really does draw a lot of mixed feelings within the community. But trust me when I say it's more than a pro. Now let's go into our abilities here. Today we're actually on D4 builds instead of Lothric. I wanted to try it out. I actually like the functionality a little bit more. So Lash. Lash, you swipe in front of you, damaging all enemies. Very basic skill. Maybe that's why it's because it's a basic skill. Every 10 Lash swipes, it stuns all enemies hit for 2 seconds. Enhanced makes it to where the initial swipe of Lash critically strikes and swipes an additional time. Glinting, hitting a stunned enemy with Lash reduces your cooldowns by 0.25 seconds. Again, every 10 swipes, it's going to automatically stun for 2 seconds. So this will proc quite a bit. Now, funny enough, we actually run 5 points in the Fireball. The only reason we run Fireball is because we want the enchantment when we're going through leveling and even early endgame. When you kill an enemy, when this is the enchantment, when you kill an enemy, they explode in a fireball for 50% of its damage. This is why we pump 5 points into this, to get the most amount of damage on the spell available. Now here's another funny thing, we run charge bolts in the build, but again, we don't actually even really need to use this. This actually isn't going to be on our bar, believe it or not. We take this to have it synergize with our ultimate, which we'll be going over. The main reason is to have enhanced charge bolts. Hit an enemy 3 times with the same cast of charge bolts releases a lightning nova. And then destructive, hitting an enemy with charge bolts reduces their damage dealt by 20% for 3 seconds. So keep these 2 modifiers in mind when we go over our ultimate ability. For now, let's jump right into our defenses. We run 3 defensives in this build, and you're thinking, well, teleport's not really defensive, but trust me, it is. First up, Flame Shield, the best defensive in the entire game. Now, this literally makes you immune to all damage for 2 seconds, and it allows you to burn surrounding enemies for 40% damage per second, so you inflict burning. Enhanced Flame Shield grants 25% movement speed while active, and Shimmering heals you for 50% of your missing life. So not only is this one button skill, granting you immunity for 2 seconds, but it's healing you for 50%. Now, hardcore players, listen up, because this is huge. Sorceress gets 2 enchantment slots. So normally we would run Arc Lash for 1 for extra cooldown reduction and the Fireball enchantment. But hardcore players, if you run Flame Shield, you get a cheat death every 120 seconds. When you would normally take fatal damage, Flame Shield automatically activates, granting you the 2-second immunity. The only class in the game to have a cheat death. Now let's go over the teleport. Teleport is normally something that is a mobility skill and used to just maneuver around, but in this case it is our opener. We are actually tele-stomping like we are playing Diablo 2, mainly because of this bad boy right here, Shimmering Teleport. When we teleport, we gain 30% damage reduction for 5 seconds. Enhanced Teleport, cooldown is decreased by 0.5 seconds per enemy hit. Now teleport is on a very short cooldown, 11 seconds. So when we stack cooldown reduction, we can probably get this down to about 4 to 5 second cooldown. We slam 5 points in the Frost Nova to get the cooldown as low as we can. Frost Nova, we just freeze all enemies around us for 3 seconds. With Enhanced, killing enemies frozen by Frost Nova reduces its cooldowns by 1 second up to 4 seconds per cast. Mystical Frost Nova allows us to inflict vulnerability for 4 seconds against everybody hit by Frost Nova. So our opener would be we teleport in, get ourselves the 30% damage reduction, we Frost Nova, freeze everything, everything's vulnerable, and we spam Arc Lash. So let's talk about our ultimate, Unstable Currents. Lightning surges within you for 10 seconds whenever you cast a shock skill, which would be our Arc Lash. A random core, conjuration, or mastery shock skill is also cast. So in this case, every time we cast Arc Lash, we have Charge Bolts. This automatically cast, it does not need to be on our bar. We then get the modifiers from Enhanced and Destructive. For our Keystone passive, we run Veer's Mastery. Close enemies take 10% increased damage from your shock skills and deal 20% less damage to you. We are a melee build, everything is close to us. So we are constantly dealing 10% increased damage, and they are constantly dealing 20% less damage. So when you pair this with Unstable Current, which procs our Charge Bolt, which procs the 20% extra damage reduction for all enemies hit by Charge Bolts, for 10 seconds, all enemies are doing 45% less damage. So Unstable Currents is something that you should use on big packs, and anytime you really can. Do not sleep on this ability. It is a massive, massive spike to our overall survivability and damage. Our prime Unstable Currents with the ability increases our attack speed by 25%. And Supreme, this is also pretty big. Crackling Energy continually pulses and consumes no charges. So let's go over our passives. So we are extremely passive heavy and we stack a lot of lucky hits. So the first one, Elemental Attunement. Lucky hit, crit strikes have up to 5% chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensives, can only happen once every 10 seconds. We take 3 points in the Glass Cannon, dealing 18% increased damage, but taking 9% more damage. 3 points in the Precision Magic, your lucky hit chance is increased by 15%. This is why we take multiple lucky hit modifiers. This increases our lucky hit chance up to, or total, 45% because Arc Lash is already a 30% lucky hit. So just with our skill tree alone, we get up to 45% lucky hit chance. We take 1 point to align the elements. This is really just more of a prereq, but 1% damage reduction against elites for each second you haven't taken damage from one, up to 40%. So basically, if you run around, you haven't seen an elite in a while, or in 40 seconds, then engaging into an elite pack, you will have another 40% damage reduction. It's pretty nice. Protection, using a cooldown, which we run 3 defensives, we're always using cooldowns. We grant 30% of our max life as a barrier for 2 seconds. Paired with this, Icy Veil. Our barriers have a 15% increased duration. 3 points in the Static Discharge, another lucky hit. Crit strikes from shock skills have up to 15% chance to form a Crackling Energy. Shocking Impact, every time we stun an enemy, we deal 45% lightning damage to them. we are going to be stunning a lot of enemies, so this is one of those things that's going to have a lot of uptime. And for our last 3 passes, we take 1 point in the coursing currents. Hitting enemies with shock skills increases your crit strike chance by 1%, resets upon getting a crit. This is more or less just a prereq for our other 2, but nonetheless it's decent, especially when we're RNGing and we don't have a lot of crit early on. Eventually, this won't play a big factor because we are going to be stacking a lot of crit chance. 3 points into electrocution. Enemies deal 15% less damage for 5 seconds after being critically struck by your shock skills. And 2 points into convulsions. Lucky hit, shock skills have up to 6% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds. And that's it for my Arc Lash Sorceress build. Again, I think this is going to be one of the strongest builds in the game, and once you get those aspects, you are going to feel like an absolute god. Trust me, this build is going to be crazy. It is going to be a tier 100 clearer without a doubt. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great launch tomorrow. Enjoy the game. And until next time, amigos, take care.